This is Money Made Simple, the financial podcast that keeps it simple and gets to the point.
Kia ora and welcome everyone to another episode of Money Made Simple. I'm very lucky today to be joined by a guest. I have Jane Wrightson here, who is New Zealand's Retirement Commissioner. Thanks very much for coming in, Jane.
My pleasure.
So you've come in today to talk to us about retirement. We talk lots about investing and saving, and we talk about retirement as an abstract thing in the future. I think it's really important sometimes to actually think about what that means for us. Before we go there though, can we start with a little bit about you, what you were doing prior to becoming the Retirement Commissioner, why we need a Retirement Commissioner in New Zealand?
Okay, I came from outside this industry. I came from a 30-year career in screen and media.
So you're very comfortable with this setup then?
Well, no, behind the cameras, I hasten to add. But the Retirement Commission is a Crown entity, and I used to run New Zealand On Air and another couple, so running a Crown entity is what I know how to do.
Right.
This whole industry was a huge learning curve for me, and I've kind of used my own story in gaining knowledge as a bit of a touch point for me and where I think the industry does well in communicating information and where it could beef up, because I'm not the expert.
How long have we had a Retirement Commission in New Zealand?
Since the mid-90s, it came about after some political upheavals where one government said we want a pension system like this, a new one, and the next government just said no we don't, and chucked it out.
Right.
And very wise heads at the time said you cannot run a long-term thinking piece of policy like retirement that's subject to political lurching, right? It's really bad for people and it affects trust in the system. So one of the recommendations was to set up a small commission like mine to advocate for long-term stability and to take an independent view on what should be done, a little bit out of the buffeting of day-to-day politics.
They could do that with a few other things, couldn't they, maybe?
Long-term thinking is really hard for politicians. They're on a 3-year election cycle, and yet when you think about infrastructure, when you think about education and health, when you think about retirement planning, all of these things need a long-term view. It's a live conversation amongst people like me. I wonder if we can do this better. And the short answer is yes, we can. But I don't think we're there yet.
So you would see the job of the Commission is mostly around advocacy?
Absolutely. I've got no power in any sense of the word. So the job of the Commission it's got 3 jobs in statute, really. And one is around retirement policy itself, which is largely around NZ Super and to a degree KiwiSaver settings.
Yeah.
The other is around financial capability, which is where our sorted website comes in, so direct-to-consumer work.
We talk about the sorted website every episode of...
Well, I'm so pleased because
it's such a great resource.
Yeah, it's an independent source of truth, really. Yeah. And the last thing we do is a piece of work around retirement villages, which I won't bother you with here, but it's also fractious.
Right. So can you paint a bit of a picture for us then of what retirement looks like?
What it looks like for your mum and dad will be a bit different to what it looks like for you. There's a kind of stereotype at the moment that says retired people are relatively well off. They're in their spending phase, which is absolutely true. They've got lots of money because apparently boomers have lots of money and everything's very comfortable.
Yeah.
And yet what we know is that 40% of New Zealanders right now, of pensioners right now, are living on NZ Super alone.
Yeah.
And 20% just a bit more. So that's 60% of people who will not be especially financially comfortable. The stereotype of the European river cruise travellers is out of reach for many. And why is that? Because there's a generation of New Zealanders who have not had KiwiSaver. They may have been lucky enough to have one of the old corporate or government pensions if they stayed in it. And in the early days, women had to retire out of the public sector when they married. So don't even start me on the gender gap here. So retirement is different for many. The bottom 20%, the people that have struggled for most of their life, getting on NZ Super is sometimes the first stable income they've ever had.
Wow.
So for them, that's quite good. For everybody else, it can be a bit tough unless they've managed to save, right?
That's the story we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
Where do you think the stereotype comes from then? If actually 60% of retired New Zealanders are maybe struggling a little bit financially, why do we think they're all having a wonderful time?
I think the generations are shouting at each other.
We like to give each other a hard time.
Millennials and boomers and Gen Xers and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And we just have to lift ourselves out of this kind of epithet culture, if you like, and go, people are different. Some people are well off, some people are absolutely not well off, some people are in the middle. There's not necessarily a generational bias to this.
So do you think that we can talk a little bit about NZ Super, but it's set at a rate that I assume the expectation is that you could live on the pension, but is that actually the reality?
You can live on the pension, and many do, but the pension is predicated on you either owning your own house outright or being in social housing,
right,
like little council flat or pensioner flat. Now, both of those models are under significant pressure, as we know. So if you have significant housing costs like rent or a crumbling villa that needs attention, the pension will not be able to help you much during that. So then you get into things like accommodation supplement and the additional assistance that you can get if you're poor enough, but it's tough, right? So that's why, for instance, in KiwiSaver, I'm fully in support of the get out of jail card free of KiwiSaver being to buy your first home, because owning your home is a key plank of a more comfortable retirement.
I also think having KiwiSaver, when you're allowed to take the money out for your first home, you get engaged with saving and investing early on. You've got a milestone that comes sooner in your life. If it was just retirement and you're 18 and you're in your first job, it would be a lot easier to opt out if there wasn't that option. So I think
that's right, and given it is an opt-out scheme, but it is voluntary, I think that's so important. So when you're young, toss about retirement. Why would you? You're worried about other things, and frankly, you should be having a bit of a good time with your first few pay packets. So the discipline around, from your first pay packet, do this, and then let it sit.
And you don't even have to think about it, right?
That's
you
perfect.
can still have a bit of fun. Do you think then KiwiSaver has changed the game a bit for retirement, for getting people thinking about it, for setting themselves up?
It's a total game changer. The corporate superannuation schemes have largely fallen away now, except for the large companies and some of the multinationals, right? But I come from the film and television sector, where almost all of the workers there are gig workers and self-employed. So most of them, many of them, have not had any opportunity to have, say, employer contributions and yada, yada, yada. So KiwiSaver is a superb mechanism to start people thinking about it, and it makes it easy. There's always going to be debate about whether KiwiSaver's made a difference. Well, in my view, it absolutely has. If you're really smart with money, then of course you'll have KiwiSaver and you'll be investing in other places as well. If you're lazy with money or don't care about it so much or don't know so much about it, then KiwiSaver is a fantastic thing for you to, in many ways, set and forget for a while. And then when we watch the contribution levels build, that's, as you say, that's when you get interested. You go, oh my God, I've got $10,000. Oh my God, I've got 20. That's when it starts to
And
really
it was
matter.
fairly painless.
And
there
it
is.
Painless,
yes.
That's right.
We talk a lot about the government contribution too, that even if you are part of the gig economy or you're self-employed, then at least contributing enough to get that government contribution then helps you, build that wealth.
And it's money on the table, right? So that's the free money bit, and I'd love the government contribution to be more, but this is not the the time to be asking for that. Old story. It's the little and long principle, isn't it? As much money as you can at the beginning and leave it, and then the magic of compounding interest starts.
Yeah, I'm quite jealous of the young ones that are getting into KiwiSaver in their first job and what's going to happen for them over all those years.
It is magic, but the other side of that equation is giving them enough financial skills to understand that it isn't a savings account. When you look at the moment with the very difficult economy we've got, there's a rise in hardship applications.
Yeah.
And you go, this is no good.
It shouldn't be seen as a sort of a pool that you can dip into
Correct.
if things,
Correct.
And that's a lot around financial literacy. I was just thinking about families that are really struggling at the moment. Is it a luxury, saving for retirement?
It's not a luxury, it's a necessity, but you have to be sensible about it. So if you're one of the sort of 20% of people that are struggling to put food on the table, then that's your priority, right?
Yeah.
You have to put food on the table first, look after your kids first and yourself, and then start. So that's a very different scenario where you may well need a financial mentor to get you out of debt and to reset you. There's some active intervention stuff that needs to happen then. But for the rest of us who go occasionally into a bit tight and then okay and then are a wee bit tight again, do that kind of lurching through, then the more you can forget about
Before
it
you've
and
even
then live
seen
on
it.
the rest of your money, the better it is.
Yeah. Automating is your friend, isn't it? And with
Automating is your
KiwiSaver,
friend.
that's almost done for you, so you don't even get to think about what else you could be doing with it. It's just gone.
Yeah.
Financial literacy then and financial support. Is it done well in New Zealand? If someone needs a financial mentor, does everyone have access to that kind of support?
They do, but they don't sometimes know about it. It's great you've got a relationship with Debt Fix. There's another organisation called Money Talks. It's a helpline that anybody can ring and then be referred to a financial mentor as necessary.
Right.
And that's all, generally speaking, about getting you out of the debt that you're probably in already and that kind of dreadful whirlpool that happens, right?
Yes, so there is support for people. And what about if you're not necessarily in any trouble? So in this podcast, Liv and I are the hosts. Liv is the financially sorted one, and I am the financial hot mess trying to get her life together. And I've had times when I've been on maternity leave or working part-time, studying that kind of things when money's been really tight. But I've never been in a hardship situation. But I definitely could have been doing better at the time financially.
All of us can do better.
I'm doing better now. What about the general level of financial literacy in New Zealand? Do you think it's okay?
It's pretty bad, but it's pretty bad in America. Globally, it's pretty bad. And I think it's because you don't tend to take much notice of it until you're ready, right? And anybody who's in marketing knows that. The messages go foot. Until it lands.
Yeah.
So the trick is to get people at the right time with the right information. Incredibly easy to say, incredibly hard to do.
Yeah.
But I think some of this is just like water on a stone. You just keep saying the same thing over and over again, and at various stages people will listen. When something's happening, either they're in financial trouble or they're at a milestone, they're buying a house, they're having a baby, they're changing a job with a bigger salary. Something will happen to make them go, oh gosh, I need to do something about this now. And that's when the availability of the information coming from your KiwiSaver provider, from Sorted, too much information, I think, between friends. We're really bad at seeking financial advice in this country. Or we're really bad at wanting to pay for it.
Yeah,
which makes me cross.
It's very strange that we won't pay to potentially get wealthier. If you get good advice, then you're going to be better off. But it's not something that we like investing money in, is it?
Yeah. Again, if you follow various social media groups and pages, people are literally advising each other, and I mean advice.
Yeah.
And you're going, stop it. A, you're breaking the law. And B, talking about money, you need to talk to professionals about it. And a large chunk of this information is free. You'll get it from your KiwiSaver provider. Simplicity is very active in this space. Your comms are great.
Yeah.
You'll get it from Sorted. You'll get it from various workshops and webinars. There's some people like Simran Kaur who are doing wonderful work.
And reaching out to people who wouldn't traditionally have been thinking about these things.
Right.
Yeah,
The talking about money is a thing. So New Zealanders have not been good at that traditionally, but I think in the last 2 or 3 years that's changed. It might be post-COVID, I don't know, but there seems to be a rise of interest in personal finance now, and you're seeing that with some of the media outlets now running personal finance pages and things like that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think also, though, the ability to get more involved, we've talked about this in the past, that investing used to be something for people who had lots of money and could have those conversations. You don't need a lot of money to start off anymore.
That's exactly right. And when I started out, going to a broker to me was a completely foreign country. I never thought I would have had enough money, and I probably didn't.
Yeah.
And it was male, it was starchy. I didn't understand it much, and therefore I didn't.
Now there's more
That's right.
options for people, and which I think is great and is likely to change the way the younger generations feel about money and feel about long-term investing.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, thinking young people are finding the world a bit grim at the moment, and it's unsurprising. And the only way you can deal with that is taking control of what you can control. And the way you can give yourself an okay life is to take control of your finances. It's a really basic thing to do that will materially increase your happiness levels. And it's not that money is happy, it's what money can do for you that makes you happy.
That's been the biggest change in my own personal mindset.
It's the old thing about goal setting. What do you want your life to look like? Are you going to have children? Are you going to need to look after your parents? Do you want to travel? All those things. And a little bit of planning in this space gives you choice. And this is about choice.
Yeah. That's what simplicity is all about. Do you think that knowledge and those skills, whose responsibility is it to help raise New Zealand's literacy levels?
All of
Is
us,
it the
really.
individual? Is it the government? Is it...
All of the above.
Yeah.
But what really needs to happen, in my view, is a really tight focus on financial education in schools. People say it's not taught in schools. Actually, it is, but it's really fragmented. It's barely connected to the curriculum, and it's completely depends on whether or not there's a teacher in the school that cares about this stuff.
Yeah.
So I am working hard at the moment with a group of current education providers and the ministry to try and figure out a way to teach financial education in schools more coherently. Finally, we've got a way in through the maths curriculum, and I said that's fantastic, but what about the kids that are no good at maths, meaning me?
And
So
me.
what will the others, we need it in at least one other subject that everybody does, and of course that's social studies or social sciences. If we had a strong financial education component with materials and NCEA credits and the rest of it in both those subject
Subjects.
areas, then we'll cover almost all the kids in the country. Now, wouldn't that be awesome?
It
I'm going
really
to
would.
knock this off in a month.
Great. Okay, you heard it here first, everybody. This will be sorted.
I suspect I'll die trying, but we're working with a number of people on this, and it's great.
Because, of course, that's the place that's going to have the greatest impact. The young people that will have this skill base their whole lives, they will make informed decisions. They'll also take this knowledge back to their families, hopefully, and have
really
those
right.
conversations. Okay, well, let's wrap part one up then. We've talked briefly about retirement in New Zealand, and that actually the retirement that we think of, most people are enjoying their cruises down the Riviera, is actually a bit more of a stereotype, and that the majority of New Zealanders are doing their best with minimal savings. But KiwiSaver is changing that. It's been around for almost 20 years. And so coming generations hopefully will be in a slightly different position. The real game changer in that way. And then also the role of financial literacy, something that everyone should be working on. The more we know, the better decisions we make. And that it's a great idea to try and get, if you can, get financial advice from a qualified advisor rather than your neighbour. We talk about this all the time. We don't give financial advice, but we share information and we point people to great sources of information. So is that a fair sum up?
That's a brilliant summary.
Thanks, Jane. Okay. Thanks very much, everyone. We'll see you in part 2.
This podcast contains personal opinions and is intended to provide educational information only. It doesn't relate to your particular financial situation or goals and is not financial advice or recommendations. Simplicity New Zealand Limited is the issuer of the Simplicity KiwiSaver scheme and investment funds. For product disclosure statements, please visit Simplicity's website, simplicity.kiwi.